can get started. We have a few folks still coming in, and we'll let them grab a seat. Good evening. Hey, we're here to celebrate, right? We are so glad to have all of you here. The fact that you took your Friday night to spend a little bit of time with us celebrating 10 years of Impact 100 Pensacola Bay Area. That's awesome. It makes me think that maybe we'd like to know who all came out tonight. So I want to ask if you have ever written a $1,000 check. Another way to think about that is if you've ever had a little sip of the Impact Kool-Aid, please stand up. Thank you. You can be seated. So I'm looking around. Thanks for turning up the house lights. I'm looking around. I see a few men in our audience tonight. So maybe I'll say, if you've ever supported Impact 100 in any way, your wife, maybe we call that Impact Anonymous in the Impact world for us. So if you've ever supported a woman in Impact or supported the organization of Impact in any way, please stand up. Thank you. We really do appreciate your support. You know, it is true that to be a member of Impact 100, that is a voting member, you have to be a woman, but we'll take a check from any guy who wants to send one our way. So thank you for your support. We invited nonprofits to be with us tonight, and I know there are a number of them here. So we would like to ask, if you are a nonprofit serving the needs of this community, and when I say a member of a nonprofit, I'm not just talking about the executive directors, I'm talking about board members, volunteers, people who give of their time to support nonprofits who are making a difference in the lives of people in this community every day. Please stand up. Thank you. Okay, we're about ready to get started. There are two other groups that we'd like to recognize tonight. If you have ever served on the board of Impact 100 over its 10 years, would you please stand up tonight and be recognized? And it's hard to believe that it started 10 years ago by a group of women who had the courage to invest a whole lot of their time to getting this started. And I think that we would like to recognize those founding board members of Impact 100. So for those of you who are here tonight, would you please stand and be recognized? So the goal was, no matter who you are in this room tonight, that you stood up to be recognized, because Impact really has been about an entire community effort. And we're so grateful that all of you are here. You're going to be a part of this celebration. It's funny, when we think about Impact, we often think that, you know, we're the best kept secret there is, that only here in Escambia and Santa Rosa County could we be doing what we're doing today. But I have news for you. It's spreading. It's spreading beyond this community, and the message is clearly out there. How do I know? Take a look at this video that you're about to see, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
Hi everyone, I'm Katie Couric. I want to congratulate the women of Impact 100 Pensacola Bay Area on your 10-year anniversary. Wow, your story is inspiring and your success in making your community better is so worth celebrating. For years, women have been working quietly behind the scenes and boldly in the face of adversity for change. Every day, women are giving. They're giving their time, talent, and treasure to positively impact the lives of others. Women are giving independently and collectively to make a difference, both big and small. Women are working to motivate, nurture, and expand their influence and strengthen their contributions. And as they aspire for and work to do more, women are changing lives, their communities, and in fact, the entire world. 10 years ago, the women in your community took action on a vision to become a part of a collaborative, informed, and empowered group of women to make a difference in the Pensacola Bay Area. Demonstrating what can happen when you work together, you've set an incredible example of the power of collaboration, education, and effective philanthropy. So celebrate your mission. You're a group of women from diverse backgrounds with different perspectives and points of view. You're full-time caregivers working beside women executives, young women working beside those with years of life experience. You may be different, but you're working together, combining your knowledge, experience, perspective, and resources to build a healthier and more sustainable community. You're giving, involved, and engaged. You're turning your inspiration and passion into action. Celebrate your success. Celebrate 10 years of making a difference as you've opened your hearts to helping others. Celebrate that you've lived up to your name. What an impact you've made. Congratulations again, and best of luck on another 10 years.
Wow, what about that? Katie Couric here. Pretty cool. Thank you, Katie. Hi, my name is Marny Needle, and I will be serving as your MC tonight. I'm going to introduce each of our speakers to you. Before that, however, would everyone take just a moment and please turn off your cell phones? Thank you. Our first speaker tonight, well, you already saw her. It's Debbie Ritchie. Here, everybody knows Debbie. Golly, let me just share a few introductory thoughts about her with you. Debbie is the kind of person who leaves an indelible mark on you, whether you're one of her closest friends or you've met her just once. She has the unique ability to touch your soul, reach down into the essence of who you are and who you want to be. She inspires you to become more, to make more of a difference, to live more, to want to do more. She's made a difference in every stop along her illustrious career, which you can read in the program. But here are a few of the highlights. She is the founder of Impact 100, Pensacola Bay Area. She is a native Floridian and an FSU grad. She moved to Pensacola in 1999, yay, our good fortune, from the Florida Keys, where she served as a state representative in the Florida House of Representatives. And she served as the minority floor leader her last 2 years in office. She's also the chief operating officer of the Studer Group. She's a servant leader, and she showed that as she was president of Impact 100. She is a board member of the University of West Florida Foundation and of Gulf Coast Kids House. Just some of Debbie's awards include, she was named Quality Floridian by the Florida League of Cities. She was named Woman Business Leader of the Year by 2 different business organizations. At the PACE Awards, she was named Community Leader of the Year by the Chamber. And she was named Civic Leader by the Kiwanis Club of Pensacola. Please welcome my friend, Debbie Ritchie.
So thank you all so much. What an honor it is to be here tonight, to have just a little bit of your time to reflect and to remember a little bit about the history of Impact 100. No written speech, anything like that. I just want to go back in time a little bit because it's important that we do so that we remember and we can become even better than what we are today. It's interesting as I thought back on those 10 years, how we started. Anybody remember what we first talked about when we were out there trying to sell Impact 100, where we heard about it? It was People Magazine, right? I'm often a little bit embarrassed that I wasn't reading Time, I wasn't reading Newsweek, none of that. It was a People Magazine article, sitting in the carpool line at a middle school waiting to pick up my daughter. And I read a story that was inspiring about the difference that a group of women were making in Cincinnati. And you're going to hear about that story tonight from the founding president of that organization. Read that article and I thought, golly, we could do this right here in this community. I know we could do this. And so it was right about on the heels of a Super Bowl party. And a group of us women were sitting around doing something more than just watching football. We started talking about this article and how really inspiring it was and what a difference it could make if we just would embark upon it here in this community. From there, we gathered a group of women together and we started our work to make it happen. That first year, 233 women, pioneers, if you will, taking a chance to make a difference in our community. Now, what's interesting about that as I think about that story, that 233 women who first signed up, is when we were getting ready to embark on it, there were so many naysayers out there telling us that it just wouldn't work. Now, can anybody believe that that could possibly happen? So I could go on and on about all the reasons it just won't work, but let me just pick out a couple. We brought in an executive director of a very prominent foundation to coach us a bit, if you will, on all the things we ought to watch out for. And what a tremendous job he did. And he remains a friend of our organization today. He and I stay in contact, and he often laughs at what he didn't know. But he said, you know, I just don't think it's going to work. After we went through our day of trying to collaborate on how to do it, he says, it's not going to work because you're asking people to write a $1,000 check and they don't know where the money is going. You're asking them to take a leap of faith to give you money and then decide where you'll spend it. It's never going to work. Anybody here believe it's working? Absolutely, it's working. Or then there were the group of people who said, don't do it. I've never seen a group of women get together and agree on anything. It's not going to happen. Give it up. Forget it. Well, let me tell you, groups of women are getting together and reviewing these grants and making decisions, and we are learning and growing as women and as a community. We're learning and growing about the nonprofits in this community that are serving our needs and what a difference we are making. So to all the naysayers over the last 10 years, we did it. You better believe we did it, right? Congratulations. Okay, so the journey, what other pieces of the journey are worth sharing? So how about this? We decide to call a press conference to announce our first 5 finalists. The date was September 16, 2004. Now, anyone that knows me on a personal level knows I cannot just pull numbers, dates, anything out of my head. So how in the world could I possibly recall this date? Anybody remember? Yeah. Our press conference was all set. We were all energized. We could hardly wait to share those 5 finalists. And Hurricane Ivan came ashore and devastated our community. And you can imagine, set us back emotionally on what we would do. Now, I knew that I was getting to know a few people in Pensacola and Santa Rosa County. What I didn't know was just how many people I was getting to know, because like the rest of the founding board, you cannot imagine how many phone calls we started to receive. And most of the messages were something like, don't do it. Don't give your money to the nonprofits. You've got to give it to rebuilding our community. We're devastated. Please rethink what you're doing with the dollars. We spent hours deliberating that because we certainly understood our community was devastated. That bold group of women that first year, not just the founding board, but those 233 women who signed up, we stayed the course, and aren't we glad we did? What a difference that made. We've given away a lot of grants over the years, and to all those nonprofits who are here who have been recipients of those grants, we thank you. Because one of the other things we heard was, we won't get enough good grant applications. There's no way to give away that much money to good quality grant recipients in this community. Every year we get great grants. We get them from organizations who start with us very unprepared to receive the money. Organizations like the Leaning Post Ranch, Milk and Honey, who years later go on to receive the grant. How exciting that is. I think about that first year when Bill Greenhut was the presenter for Snoozlin Westgate. I loved that grant. By the way, I was the founding president. Shouldn't I have a say in where the money goes? It's a democratic process. And Snoozlin wasn't selected that very first year. Imagine the thrill I received when weeks later Bill called me to say, we didn't receive the money that night, but we've received in excess of $200,000 since that night, and we have the Women of Impact to thank for that. That's the impact of impact. It's effective philanthropy. It's telling the story. It's going beyond just the grant recipients. So if you are a nonprofit in this audience tonight and you haven't yet received the money, don't give up. We believe that we are sharing your story. We are bringing to you good board members. We're making a difference for you in different ways. And besides that, you just might get the money in a year to come. So hang with us. Continue to apply, continue to share your needs and your stories, and we will continue to fulfill those needs. It has been an incredible journey, many stories along the way, many things that we could tell you. What we really want to tell you tonight is how grateful we are. So with that, I'd like to share with you, as a part of my closing remarks, a story. This is the story of how one person can make a difference, can make an impact in the life of another. Many of you know, you heard earlier that I'm the COO with the Studer Group, so I touch healthcare. This happens to be a healthcare story, but it's more than that. It's a human story. I'd like to share it with you now. This is a story that was written by Wendy Mayo in a blog that she wrote following the loss of her son, Zach. And it really does reveal the impact that a person can have on someone's life. I was standing in the checkout line of a grocery store when I saw her. Her face was familiar, but I just couldn't be certain. She and 3 girls stood in the line next to me. I looked again, trying not to be obvious, and trying harder to remember. Then I heard her speak to one of the girls. Then I knew that voice, and I remembered, and I swallowed hard, swallowing down the memory of that day, that painful day in June. She was the voice that called out to us in the emergency room. She was the voice that was commanding yet kind. She was the voice that told us that our 11-year-old son had no cardiac activity. She was the voice that ushered us to a small room. She was the voice that stayed late into the night to care for our family needs in the beginning of our darkest hours. She was the voice of compassion. Her name, I couldn't remember, but I did remember that voice. I hurried to pay, hoping I could leave before her. Instead, I found myself following her out the store, purposefully keeping distance from her, afraid she just might recognize me, purposefully avoiding her, purposely avoiding the still raw emotions from that day, nearly 2.5 years ago. My grocery loaded, I wanted to jump in my car and simply speed away, but the voice inside me urged, find her. So I found myself across a dark parking lot, face to face with a voice who was loading her groceries in the back of a car. I found myself asking if she worked at New Hanover Regional. She said yes and told me I looked familiar. To that, I said, I'm Zach's mom. And then she hugged me. She hugged me tight. And I told her I would never forget the kindness, and I thanked her for all that she did for Zach and for our family. And she shared her life with me. And we hugged some more. And I knew that God had put us together, not just in that emergency room, but in that parking lot, at that grocery store, at that very moment. And two grown women, two women who barely knew one another, bound by the memory of a boy loved, standing hugging, tearfully, sharing life and death in a grocery store parking lot. I return home, car full of groceries, heart full of joy, and I whisper, thank you. Grateful, so grateful that I didn't miss the opportunity to say thank you. You know, gratitude is a wonderful thing, but it's only a wonderful thing if you take the time to express it. And so tonight, I have the privilege and the honor on behalf of Impact 100 of saying thank you. Thank you to everyone in this room for making it happen. It's just one person. It's just $1,000 until we all come together and make a difference. So thank you.
And thank you, Debbie. Sister Schubert Barnes is the kind of person that people want to know. Maybe it's the wonderful rolls that she bakes. Well, her bakery makes them now. But she often sets the pace at her bakeries, where over 9 million rolls are made every day. But not so long ago, in 1989, Sister Schubert baked those famous rolls in the kitchen of her home in Troy, Alabama, just for her family and friends. In 2000, she sold the stock in her company to Lancaster Colony, a specialty foods corporation in Columbus, Ohio, where Sister and her husband, George, still remain active as executives today. She's the kind of person that those who work with her will tell you about her tireless enthusiasm and her kindness for excellence in her product, which is at the heart of her success. Her work in the Ukraine is truly inspirational and shows what kind of a person she is, and she'll tell you about that. Sister Schubert Barnes is honored to serve as the culinary ambassador for the state of Alabama. She serves on the board of directors of the Alabama Women's Hall of Fame. She serves Auburn University as a visiting executive in the Lauder School of Business and as a member of the Women's Philanthropy Board, also as a member of the Dean's Board of the School of Human Resources. She sits on the foundation board at Troy University, and she also serves on the Barnes Family Foundation as its president. And let me just extend my most warm welcome to my new friend, Sister Schubert.
Hi, everybody. I am Sister Barnes, and I cannot tell you what a joy it has been for us to be here in Pensacola with all of you that I have met over the past several days. My husband, George, and I are absolutely thrilled to be here, not only because of this Impact 100 event, but because we have been able to rekindle a wonderful friendship with his cousin, Joan Bullock, and her husband, Ellis. It has been a true joy to be in a home away from home at a time when you're really supposed to be working, and we've just been enjoying ourselves and playing. So thank you for your generosity and your hospitality. Several months ago, Bell Bear phoned me and said, "Sister, we'd like to have you be our speaker for our Impact 100 group." And I'm often called and asked to speak to events, and I said, "Well, Belle, that's wonderful. I tell you what, would you send me some information about your group? Because I really had no idea what Impact 100 in Pensacola did or what they were about." And she did, and after I looked over it, I said, "Well, this is interesting because many of the things that our foundation does, this Impact organization also does." So I decided that, yes, it would probably be a really nice experience for me to come, be an inspiration to those of you that have impacted this community. But when I got here for the last 2 days, I have been inspired by all of you, and I thank you for that very much. From the time that I could sit on a kitchen stool and hold a spoon, I have loved being in the kitchen and cooking and baking. And thankfully, I was guided by 5 generations of fabulous cooks in my family. When I was only 12 years old, my grandmother, on my father's side, we affectionately called her Gummy, and she came to get me one day and she said, "Sister, you're going home with me and I'm going to teach you how to make these rolls." And yes, she called me sister. My real name was Patricia. But from the time I was born, my older sister was only 16 months old and could not say Patricia. So my mother and father said, "Well, call her sister. She's your sister." And she did, and my friends did, and my college professors did, and my husband George does. And I think that I was supposed to be sister, not Patricia. So we got that out of the way. I'm always asked that question, so I thought we'd just get that out of the way. But I did take my grandmother's recipe for everlasting rolls and turned it into my calling. I was inspired by Gami's spirit, her talent, and her confidence in me. After a brief foray in the catering business, I started down the path to what would become Sister Schubert's Homemade Rolls. In 1991, I asked God to help me start my business, and I told him that if he would, that I would help him feed the hungry people in the world. This was what I thought was a great thing to say at the time. Never mind, God has many more plans for you than what you think your plans are. In essence, I entered into a business relationship with my Lord because I have already had a personal relationship with him. The phenomenal growth of Sister Schubert's Homemade Rolls has taken me from my kitchen to the boardroom in a rather short time. My husband George and I were financially blessed when we sold the stock of our company in the year 2000. And we decided then and there that there was a greater purpose for our financial abundance. In 2001, we did set up the Barnes Family Foundation, a nonprofit charitable organization dedicated to improving the lives of the less fortunate and enhancing others in our community through educational scholarships, historical preservation, and compassion for the needs of children. This current chapter in our lives has been nothing short of extraordinary. We believe also that no one should go hungry. So the foundation began by helping local food banks and shelters that were in efforts to help feed the hungry. And in an attempt to help our young people become more aware of the world around them, we established an annual scholarship for study abroad. This did not mean just a student studying in America going abroad, but bringing a student from abroad to study in America. These enable students to have an experience larger than themselves, in which they could not have afforded otherwise. it gives them an opportunity to have a hands-on approach to working with people and cultures that were so different from their own. When I recall the times in my life that I have been inspired to try a new recipe or embark on a new adventure or to step out of my comfort zone, which was the hardest of all for me to do, I often wondered where that inspiration came from. Now I realize in afterthought and perspective that these moments have not been ones of great discovery, but rather moments of tiny gifts. In 2001, a friend of mine asked me to attend a local Rotary Club meeting. Well, I was in my blue jeans and baseball cap, and those of you that are in the Rotary Club understand what that would be like. And I said, well, I'd love to do that. He said, there's a speaker that I think you would like to hear. And I said, okay, I'll try. And I walked out of my office, past my door that had my skirt and blouse that I always kept just for such an occasion, and walked down the hall and said, I don't have time to do that. There's a problem on line 1. I've got to go back out there. But I found myself putting that skirt and blouse on and going to that Rotary Club meeting. I never saw myself as an international humanitarian worker, but there was a missionary speaker that was there, and after listening to him talk about the forgotten children of Ukraine and the plight of the people there, I became one. The passion and the commitment and the urgency in his voice stirred something inside of me. His words were all the inspiration that I needed to act. I listened to that little quiet voice inside of me that said, go, this is your opportunity. I knew I would become involved at some level, but I could never have imagined how personal my involvement would become. I knew that God led me to that Rotary Club meeting that day, but I also knew that there was more that I needed to do. I simply asked the Lord to give me guidance and that I would be listening, and when the time was right, He would tell me what to do next. So a few years later, in 2004, I did accompany that missionary couple to Gorlovka, Ukraine. While spending my days at the little abandoned baby center that our foundation had helped to establish, I cannot tell you how many precious children I saw that were so needy. And when I least expected it, on a freezing cold day, 16 below zero to be exact, at the baby center, God introduced me to Alexei, our future son. From the beginning, I knew that it was going to be hard for me to not be attached to each and every one of these precious children that needed us and needed our love. But all of a sudden, I became completely connected to this little 2-year-old child. There was something in his little blue-green eyes, something in his smile, his little fierce embrace when I held him, and his little badly clubbed feet, that I knew that my heart was in a divine intervention. 14 months after that day, our family welcomed little Alexander McDavid Barnes, our 5th child, into our home. And the doctors told me not to expect anything more than for him to be able to walk flat-footed because of his terrible club-footedness. But I told those doctors, he's going to be everything God wants him to be. And today, he plays on the soccer team. He's the goaltender. He's played baseball. He can run circles around you and me and anybody else in this room. You would never know that anything has ever happened to his feet. So don't tell me that God isn't good every day in every way. Sasha is the Russian nickname for Alexander. With its safe, warm, comforting tone, I thought it was only fitting to name our new foster care facility Sasha's home there in Gorlovka. Through it, we are able to provide temporary and permanent homes for right now 38 of the most beautiful children you've ever laid your eyes on. We have seen that the nurture of a family care makes all the difference in the lives of these children and the parents of these children. Progressing from an invitation to a Rotary Club meeting, to a trip to Ukraine, to adopting Alex, and then to building a foster care home in a faraway land is truly an amazing feat, not unlike what you here at Impact 100 have done. Completely humbled by the task before me, and always with God's help, I will continue this journey, as I'm sure you will also. Food, family, and faith are the themes that run through my life and my business as well. I will never forget that we started Sister Schubert's Rolls from a frozen food fair for my church. Never believe that where you are today is where you will stay. Pray and have faith and try to be of service to others. As members of Impact 100, you are all aware of the opportunities to be of service to others every day and how much your generosity is deeply needed. I commend each of you for answering that call and encourage you to continue the search for all the projects in need and answering them with your hearts. I am truly, truly thankful for my family, for my business, for my charitable foundation, and all the wonderful friends in my life. I cannot imagine where God will lead me, but I will keep an open heart and a watchful eye toward the Lord. I know that I will bake bread, I will share, and be kind to others. And I will always thank God for all the many gifts He's given to me. And you and your group are one of those today, tonight, this week. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sister. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is a wonderful woman by the name of Wendy Steele. You know, I remember the very first time I met Wendy, and you know that she is the founder of the Impact 100 concept. It was at a meeting where various Impact 100 groups from around the country had gathered together to share best practices. And Wendy was just amazing. She had an idea, a very simple idea. Get 100 women in her community to each put up $1,000 and collectively give the $100,000 to a nonprofit. Change the path of that nonprofit for their future. That simple idea has resulted in 21 different Impact 100 groups awarding over $29 million to date. I have been in touch with every impact group that exists, and they are so excited that you're here tonight, Wendy, and that they have shared their total new numbers. Some are still secret, as a matter of fact, depending on where they are in their process. But that is an amazing number. And of that $29 million, including 2014's 1,025 members, we account for 6,176,000 of that. How's that for an idea that became a great idea? Wendy is a passionate entrepreneur, innovator, and philanthropist with global success in both profit and nonprofit worlds. And she has a demonstrated ability to execute concepts into successful reality. Some of her highlights, and again, all of her highlights are in that program, but some of her highlights include being the founder of Impact 100, being the founder of the concept and of Impact 100 in Cincinnati, being involved with that organization for the past 13 years. That organization has raised more than $2.5 million for the greater Cincinnati community. She's an inventor and a business owner, and her work in philanthropy is noted in several books which are highlighted in your program. She's also featured in a book by Julia Rhodes entitled The Wright Sisters, Modern Women Inventors. Just this year, Wendy was awarded the Jefferson Award for Public Service for philanthropy for her work. Just the 2014 awardee. Congratulations, Wendy. And of course, she is also a member of Impact 100 Pensacola Bay Area. Please welcome Wendy Steele.
Thank you, Marny. That is a fabulous introduction. Of everything you said, I have to admit, that last part about being a member of Pensacola Bay Impact 100, that has me the most excited. I love this community. I absolutely love this community. From the first time I heard from Debbie Ritchie and Belle Bear and the founding board members here, I knew that there was something really, really special here. And so you can only imagine when I got the call some time ago to see whether I would perhaps be free when you all were going to celebrate your 10 years. Well, frankly, it didn't matter what day it was. I would have made myself free to be here to celebrate with you. It's just such a privilege. Do you all realize you're going to give away $1 million this year? More than that. For you nonprofits in the room, or for those of you who love nonprofits that may not have been able to make it, 10 grants of over $100,000. Talk about an impact. And those will be given in each one of 5 focus areas. That's transformational philanthropy. I know you're going to hear more about how you get those nonprofits to apply. And what I was asked to do was come and tell the original story. The real story of how Impact 100 got started. What went through my head when I thought about this great idea of bringing women together to transform their communities. And so, if you will indulge, I will tell you that story. And I'll tell you a little bit about the People magazine article, and I'll tell you a little bit about what's happening now. But most of all, I want you all to really recognize the strong leaders you have right here in this community. Certainly within Impact 100 over the last 10 years, and also in the nonprofit community. Because without strong nonprofits, Impact 100 can't thrive. So it really does take a village, and Pensacola certainly knows how to get it done, and I'm very grateful. So I will take you back to the summer of 2001. I don't know about you, but I do some of my best thinking when I'm on vacation. So that was the case. I was on summer vacation with my children, living in Cincinnati at the time. I was spending my time in northern Michigan. And that summer, as the kids were playing and we were relaxing, my mind kept working. And part of what kept running through my head was a series of seemingly unrelated facts, things that troubled me. For example, I had the privilege of serving on some nonprofit boards and doing some volunteer work. And as I talked to those leaders, and as we sat around the board tables, what I realized was that these nonprofits were spending an inordinate amount of time preparing grant applications and trying to find grant money that would suit their purpose. And when they received those grants, they were very grateful. Every dollar matters to every nonprofit. But when they would receive those grants, they were $3,000 here and $7,000 there and $2,000. And as awesome as that money is, it doesn't really allow those nonprofits to get their head off their desk, to look to the horizon, to execute on their strategic plan. And it was troubling, and it was an expensive way to raise money, an expensive way to run an organization. And so that troubled me. At the same time, over the past several years, over the course of my life, I had fabulous women friends. And I would call them, and I would ask if they would come join me in whatever community project I was working on. And what I heard, sadly, were really valid reasons that they couldn't join. It might be that they were a stay-at-home mom and they couldn't spend $10 an hour on a babysitter so they could come volunteer with me. Or perhaps they traveled for their work and they couldn't make weekly meetings. Sometimes I might be working on something in the Health and Human Services arena, and I would call a friend and they would say, well, that's great, and I know that's your interest, but I'm really much more interested in arts and culture, or education is my thing. The disappointing part is that I know firsthand what it feels like to give back. And it broke my heart that these wonderfully talented, compassionate women, they couldn't join in. They didn't know what it felt like to give back to their community. And to me, that was tragic. Not only did they miss out, but the community missed out on their great time, talent, and treasure. So as I watched my children play, I noodled all these things around. I had a spiral notebook. You know, I'm obviously computer literate. I spend a lot of time on a laptop and an iPad, but when I really have to do thinking, there's nothing like a pen and paper. And so as I sat there, I started to think about what I might do. Because prior to that, typically when women were involved in philanthropy, it involved volunteering a lot of their time. And you men, you had it figured out a long time ago. When men are asked to raise money for an important cause, they typically pick up the phone, call a couple of buddies, write a check, and make it happen. For women, it didn't typically work that way, and I started to wonder why. So I started to think, well, gosh, if you're interested in arts and culture, but not health and human services, how do I bring everyone together? You all understand how impact works because it's so successful here in Pensacola. But that's how the 5 focus areas came to be. The 5 focus areas were designed so that there couldn't be any nonprofit in the geographic region who wouldn't qualify to apply for a grant. And by extension, there couldn't be any woman in that same area who couldn't participate, who couldn't feel good about putting their money to work in their community in the way that they wanted to make it happen. The other side of it was, lots of these women, frankly, didn't have the time. They had the heart for their community, but they didn't have the time. So that's why Impact was designed to create your own experience. I will tell you what you already know, that if you actually write your check and give your time and give your talent, that your experience will be far greater than if you just write a check. But just writing a check is just fine with us. You know, I find that our lives sort of go in cycles, and there are times when, frankly, we don't have much in the way of talent. We certainly don't have much in the way of money, but we do have some time on our hands, and that's when we roll up our sleeves and volunteer. There are times when we may have some expertise to share on a board, but not a lot of time and maybe not so much money. And there are times when we don't have the opportunity to share our time or our talent, but we can write that check. Either way, Impact 100 welcomes you, and that's how it was designed. So as I thought this out, I thought, okay, who am I? I was not the prior president of the Junior League or the lead executive director of a nonprofit. I was not your traditional person in my community to start something. So I started again with the same loose leaf binder, and I started writing the names of all the women I knew, far and wide in my community. Some were friends, some were only acquaintances, and some were names I'd heard of. And of them, I thought, okay, now, that woman is formerly the president of the Junior League, and that woman is really good at PR and marketing, and that woman's an attorney, and that one's an accountant, and this one has done grant making. And I put stars next to the names of the women who had the skills that I needed to round out the board. I also put stars next to the people who I thought were really the most connected. And the first thing I did from my vacation is I started making phone calls. And I called the women who I thought were connected, and I called the women who I thought had the right skill set. And my first question was, okay, poke holes in this. Tell me I'm crazy, but here's this idea I have. What if we brought women together, and the only thing we asked of them is that they write a check for $1,000? And yes, I know $1,000 is a lot of money, but that's all they have to do if they choose, is write a check for $1,000. And if we can get a minimum of 100 women together, we can give it all away. Because one of the complaints that women had at that time was how much money was coming out to cover administrative expenses. So I said, don't worry. We'll pool the money. We'll give the entire thing. We won't take a nickel for administrative expenses. And corporate matching gifts, the men in our lives, private foundations, and those who either chose to give less or couldn't give up to the $1,000, all that money would be pooled together as friends of impact, and that would cover our administrative expenses. And besides, we're very good at asking for in-kind donations. And so there would be lots of organizations who would want to support us by offering their goods and their time and their services in kind. And as I made those calls and asked those questions, people were excited. And it started to have traction. So I came home from that summer vacation and got the kids off to school, and 9/11 happened. And we all took a collective gasp. We all took a break. And everyone reflected on what's happening in the world. And as we caught our breath, it now was November of that year. And I thought to myself, I think this is a good idea. I think it has traction. Originally, I had spoken to 15 women to find out if they would join me in the leadership of this organization. And I said to myself, if I can't get 10 women of this group to commit, then maybe now is not the time, and maybe Cincinnati is not the place. So we gathered together, and we said, if not us, then who? And if not now, then when? And all 15 said, I'm in. By March, we had our 501c3. By May, we had 123 women who were committed to joining. By November, we gave it all away. We had received 125 grant applications that year. In Cincinnati, it's 10 counties that we serve, but our counties are much smaller than yours. So we had 125 grant applications in our 5 focus areas. We had 5 outstanding finalists. And the winner was the McMicken Dental Clinic in Over the Rhine, which is Cincinnati's ghetto. And our $123,000 bought 5 new dental chairs to completely outfit this dental clinic. What they had been used to is they had 20-year-old equipment that had been donated from a dentist when that dentist upgraded to better equipment. The useful life of dental equipment is about 20 years. And so, you know, that light thing that the dentist pulls down and the drills, well, sometimes they worked and sometimes they didn't. We outfitted completely. And what ended up happening is they did get additional money from another family foundation to do some things around the office. They suddenly could serve 5 times the client. But more than that, dentists in the community, they heard what was happening, and they were no longer concerned about the liability of working with faulty equipment, so they volunteered. So instead of the one dentist that was on staff working like crazy trying to take care of all these patients, she now had dentists who were coming in out of the woodwork to help. And as they did, the word spread, and more people were served. That was a transformational grant. Now, you've heard from Debbie about the People magazine article. What you don't know is there's a little backstory there. So in those days, Impact 100 was headquartered in my home. So at one point, the phone rang, And the very nice woman on the other end of the phone explained that her name was Lorna Grisby and that she worked for People magazine and she wanted to interview me. Well, I almost hung up on her because I was sure it was a friend of mine, thinking that this was a very funny joke, which I was not all that amused. Once Lorna convinced me she was sincere, we spent hours, and literally hours, going over all the information and answering the questions she had. She dug deep. When the article came out, it was published in January of 2003. I received about 300 emails and many phone calls from people literally around the world. I would love to tell you that summer day when I sat with my spiral notebook taking notes, that I envisioned that it was going to be replicated and that places like Pensacola, Florida would turn it into a $1 million grant. I wish I could tell you that I expected the numbers that Marny shared with us a few minutes ago. I didn't. What I hoped for when I created it was to bring women into giving, to give them that experience, to empower them to be a part of the solution. I also hoped to really serve the nonprofit community, because you folks, the ones who roll up their sleeves and either volunteer, serve on boards, or serve on staff of nonprofits, you are making a difference each and every day. And I had hoped that Impact and its grant making would be able to give you significant grants to transform the work that you do. I never in a million years dreamt that People magazine would pick it up, nor that Katie Couric would do a story on it a few years later. But that's the way it worked. Now, the part of the story that Debbie didn't tell you, because it was fabulous, so Pensacola and Austin, Texas, were the very first two that started from Cincinnati, and from there, between word of mouth and some other lovely media attention, it's continued to grow. But you know, I keep talking about the benefits of giving back. There's a little personal benefit to giving back that happened for me that y'all might not be aware of. So, People magazine is in a lot of doctors' offices. Apparently, it's carpool lines at the middle school and airplanes. Imagine my surprise one day when my home phone rang and a very familiar voice asked to speak to, my name then was Wendy Hushak, which is hard to pronounce, especially when you see it spelled. So a vaguely familiar voice asked to speak to Wendy Hushak, and before he could get the words out of his mouth as to who he was and why he was calling, I knew. My former high school summer romance, we all know about those, was in a doctor's office, flipping through People magazine, waiting for his physical. And he saw a familiar face. And because it was People magazine, it said I was divorced, it gave my maiden name, pictures of my children. That man is Rick Steele. I can't promise you when you give back that the love of your life is going to come back into your, but it's worth a shot, right? Impact 100 has changed my life in countless ways, but that's probably the most meaningful. We're here to celebrate Pensacola, and I am lucky enough to be invited to come here and to visit other impact organizations. And when I do, of course, everybody asks the same question. They all want to know, what is so special about Pensacola? How can Pensacola, because you realize it's the world's largest impact organization. That's right. And from the very beginning, you were overachievers. Your first year, you had 233. You know, everybody else starts at 100 and something, but you just jumped right to 2 grants. And then it became 3, and then it became 4, and then it became 5. I'm grateful to be in touch with a few of the founding board members, but particularly Belle, Bear, and her daughter Cindy. And so Belle is so gracious. She calls me every year to tell me what the number is. And I say that in all sincerity because I don't know who is more excited when she makes the phone call, whether she is or I am. But typically we're both in tears by the time we get off the phone. And so this year, in anticipation of the 10-year anniversary, when she called and she said, "Gosh, Wendy, we're close, but we're not there." I think at that point they were at 7-something or 8-something. So it was still a little stretch before you get to that 1,000. And I said, "Belle, you know how I love you all. I really am not inside your demographic. I can't participate in much. I have to vote by absentee ballot, but please may I become a member because I couldn't stand not being a part of this $1 million gift." What makes Pensacola so special is all of you. It's the hardworking, caring, committed people who get up every morning and decide to make a difference, who get up every morning and look at what they can do to solve the problems that break their hearts. That's what makes Pensacola so special. My time here has been amazing, as it always is. Leaving is a little trickier this time, in part because I've been a part of this amazing celebration, and quite frankly, in part because there's snow in the forecast in Traverse City on Monday. And I know y'all complain about your cold weather, but this weather's just fine by me. I like it very much. What you've done in 10 years is spectacular, but I'd like to go on the record to make a little prediction. I believe what you're going to do in the next 10 years and the 10 years after that is even grander. And I hope to be a part of it every step of the way. But as Katie Couric said, just watch out. I'd love to see you the next 10 years. So celebrate today and giddy up for the next 10 years. And thank you for including me.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you so much. And now we get to hear from our president, Holly Jernevoy. One of the best words that describes Holly Jernevoy, our current president, is connected. Holly knows everybody. She grew up here. She's active here. She's connected here. She introduces me to more cousins, aunts, uncles, and I can't keep them all straight. And a lot of them, I think, are aunts, uncles, and cousins of the heart. And then some of them I figured out are actually aunts, uncles, cousins, etc. But it's amazing how deep her roots go. And that depth has helped her connect with women from all walks of life here. Holly is also the president of Impact 100, who took us over the magical 1,000 number. She's a graduate of Gulf Breeze High School, Emory University, and Villanova Law School. Like many graduates, she stayed away from Pensacola in Philadelphia for about 10 years after graduating from law school. But she felt the pull of family and the community, and she came back here in 1998. She works with Emmanuel, Shepard, and Condon part-time doing real estate closings. She's connected to many other organizations as well. She has been chair of the Young Women's Division of the Philadelphia Federation of Jewish Agencies. She's been president of the Children's Home Society here. She's been chair of the school advisory committees for Gulf Breeze Middle and High School. She's been secretary of the board of Chain Reaction, and she's been a member of the board of directors of Temple Bethel. Holly joined Impact in 2006 and was added to the board of directors in 2008. And please join me in a warm welcome for our president and my friend, Holly Jernevoy.
Thank you so much, Marny, for that lovely introduction. Good evening, and on behalf of the board and all of the 1,025 members of Impact 100 and everyone who's ever been a member of Impact 100, welcome to this amazing celebration. This has been an amazing evening, a wonderful celebration of the 47 grants that we have funded and the 39 nonprofits that are continuing to do such meaningful and important work in our community. These organizations have touched every corner and every aspect of life in Escambia and Santa Rosa counties. They have, among other things, fed the poor, improved and increased free health care, renovated historic sites, empowered the handicapped, and propelled the arts. You can't drive through this town without experiencing the impact of Impact 100, whether it's our logo on a vehicle or a building, children on a playground, or the sound of musical instruments. The impact of Impact is literally all around us here in this room. I don't know if you know, but the walls of this room hold the Saenger pipe organ, and we funded the renovation of their wind chests in 2012. As Debbie mentioned, even organizations that do not receive a grant feel the impact of Impact. As ladies are inspired by the mission and goals of our nonprofit applicants, they volunteer their time and resources directly to these organizations. Our grant recipients have been able to make an impact on the community because of the power that women have when they pool their funds and give collectively. Because of the efforts of our recipients, we have been able to fulfill our mission, to know and serve the community, to collectively fund significant grants to charitable initiatives, and to set an example of effective philanthropy. Nonprofits that you support, love, and believe in can be one of these organizations. Please encourage them to brainstorm ideas, dream big, and do their homework. Encourage them to attend our nonprofit workshop on April the 22nd, to submit a letter of intent to apply for a 2014 grant on April 30th, and to submit a grant application before June the 27th. Every nonprofit that applies for an Impact 100 grant gets to share the mission of their organization with caring and philanthropic women. We want to continue to fulfill our mission for the next decade of Impact 100, as Wendy mentioned. We hope to do it big. We want to recognize the creativity and efforts of the nonprofits in our community that are making a difference in our area. We want to continue to help nonprofits realize their dreams and improve life in Escambia and Santa Rosa counties. We hope 10 years from now, we can all return here and celebrate the successes of even more nonprofit organizations. I have a few thank yous, as Debbie talked about gratitude. I would like to recognize the generous sponsors for this evening. We did not use a penny of Impact 100 funds for this celebration. Those sponsors are listed. The sponsors are listed in your program, and the in-kind donations. The evening would not have been possible without the hard work of the committee that put each aspect of it together. Their names are also listed except for one. Vaughn Lewis worked many hours of the last few weeks creating the lovely slideshow that you saw before the event, and she worked tirelessly all day long, seeing to every detail of the lighting and the stage. Each woman of the committee brought their skills to the table, and we all developed skills we never knew we could. It was all done under the fearless leadership of Marny Needle, past president and chair of this committee. Thank you to the entire committee for the success of this evening. As you know, after we finish here, you're all invited upstairs for drinks and refreshments provided by local restaurants and caterers. As you leave, please do not forget to take your commemorative book that we've worked so hard to complete. I'd like to ask Debbie Ritchie to join me up here now, if she would. This book documents the impact that Impact 100 has had on this community. We hope that you'll share this book in your homes and in your offices and continue to raise awareness of our mission. There's a special dedication in this book. We have been able to accomplish so much because of the vision of one woman, and this book is dedicated to Debbie Ritchie. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening, and let's celebrate.